business cycles. Yeah. The business cycles.
Over-identification with work is not only something I've experienced in my career, but it's almost like it's foundational to it. So it's like similar to what you were saying, Katie. And I think it even started with college for me. I applied to 7 schools, but I had my heart set on one, which was NYU. I had a fantasy of being a writer, living in the Village in New York City. That's where I wanted to be, sitting in cafes where people like Burroughs and Mailer and Baldwin frequented. And so I went there and even ended up working at NYU on the same block as Edgar Allan Poe's apartment, which is pretty cool. I should mention, though, that this school was not a realistic choice, and everyone warned me of this. But I painted my teenage room purple, wore NYU clothing, and I applied anyway. And even once in as a student, no one could tell me a negative thing about the school. I was broke. I had to move out of the dorms and live in a basement studio in Queens where I subsisted on no-name brand macaroni and cheese from CVS. I think it was something like 6 for $1. It tasted so terrible I could only eat it with heaps of ketchup, and it turned this like nasty orange. And but anyway, this is not to piss on NYU, by the way. I still love the school to this day. Does the school love me? Did it ever? Of course not. NYU is a business, and a large and very successful one at that. My romantic notions of college were not realized, but I still, even to this day, allow myself to hold on to this romantic feeling. There's a benign dissonance to it, but a dissonance nonetheless. Over the years, I've come to understand the emotional grasping that comes with over-identification and the need to belong. I can admit to myself that I sometimes allow feelings to override my logical mind. I've worn corporate swag as proudly as I did my university sweats. Most of the companies and clients I have worked for or consulted with are well-known brands. Through association, I felt special. They chose me, so I must be valued and valuable. But water bottles, coffee mugs, and mouse pads don't equate to a work contract. And as we've discussed in previous episodes, work isn't family. If you put people or companies on too high of a pedestal, it makes for a more disorienting fall. Marketing and employee engagement are part of the game, and I don't say this with derision. I appreciate free water bottles and backpacks, but I'm careful not to fall into the trap of allowing myself to buy into a false narrative about the reality of the situation. The danger in allowing yourself to be blinded by marketing and your own fears is that it short circuits your critical thinking, which is necessary for sound evaluation of situations. This helps you to act more intentionally, making choices which support your better interests. It's great to love your company and also to love being at home and time for dinner with the family. It's fun to go out with your boss and colleagues after work for free drinks and also put your phone on Do Not Disturb on the weekends. It's important to divorce your emotional representation of the logo next to your LinkedIn profile from your ability to evaluate what is in your best interests. We all have to do what we have to do to get up in the morning. Sadly, most people do not do jobs which make them spring out of bed, and that's okay. But if your dissociative measures are too drastic, you numb yourself from certain realities, which can actually harm you. If the stress of your job is impacting your physical or emotional health, that's a wake-up call, a big red flag that you must investigate honestly. And what all of this means for me is the criticality of honesty. Honesty with yourself, about your situation and your professional options. It can feel easier to not look at difficult truths. I get it. And in these stressful times, none of us need more worries to carry around. Here's the thing, though. At least the honest route gives you the power to make informed decisions on your behalf. Living in fantasy will trick you into blissful ignorance, which could really result in unpleasant surprises down the road. To win the game, you need to first recognize that there is one, then learn about it and yourself. If this process results in you no longer being able to tolerate where you're at, then your intelligence has done its job.
Woo. You did it again. Look, I'm responding to a lot of your insightful thoughts, but for me, the really like overriding thing is appreciation for you, and just a shout out to your perseverance, like, and just how awesome that demonstration is. And I know we're talking about, sort of this like double-edged sword of like, like really giving it your all. But I mean, also, I think there's just the example of looking at, first of all, these origins of you like going to a school that was considered outside of your reach, and then keeping yourself in it through some of the most difficult conditions, as far as like needing to, eat. Who knows what that macaroni and cheese actually was. Like, I mean, it's probably still nutritional debt in there. But I don't know, it like one of the things that like was kind of like, I couldn't think of the exact term for it, but I have this cup that's like, take faith in how far you've come, and consider that evidence of how far you're going to go. And I just think that as a sort of shout out for anyone, who works with you as an advisor, I don't know that like there's a lot of stuff that we don't discuss on the show in terms of your background, because you've done some very national and global scope, massive things. And I think that those things which we don't discuss, combined with the context of like how far you've come to get there to be able to do that stuff, is pretty incredible. But yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're amazing. And and I'll say that, on the note of like professional swag and company identification, I have this one vignette that I'll never forget, which is I'd been working with a company. I helped grow it. It was my first company that I helped grow, and I was so absorbed in it for 4 years. Like, we went public, all this kind of stuff. Great, and it was a great run. But I was so absorbed in it, I had no context about what the company was relative to the rest of the world. This memory of being on a plane, and the gentleman next to me and we started talking, and he said, "Oh, and where do you work?" And I told him the name of the company, and he said, "What's that?" All of a sudden, such a like wake up call for me. I'll never forget it. And it was, it's like really a formative experience for me to remember that it's like, look, this over identification, it's so easy to do, but the, popping the balloon of, with reality, it can be pretty sobering. And depending on how much you've given up, it can be pretty upsetting.
Woo! This is heavy stuff. I'm going to grab a coffee. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
One of my favorite quotes I say on the show is, do what you have to do until you can afford to do what you want to do. But how can you do this if you don't know the difference between the two? Being happy is an active process. If you are passive and lack discernment, your life will serve the interests of others. In this way, life isn't fair, nor is it easy, but it's a hell of a lot harder if you don't know the rules. It's important to ask questions. There are written rules, of course. These are the obvious ones: how to perform well at your job, how to navigate difficult situations and challenging personalities. But most likely, your boss will outline these things for you, and they'll be the basis for a lot of just your kind of standard annual performance evaluation stuff. But there's also unwritten rules, cultural norms, unspoken realities, like the ones we talk about on the show. Business Psychos is about discussing these aspects of our lives. We do this because it will help you be successful, so that you can give yourself the life that makes you happy. By casting light on these things that aren't comfortable to talk about, we will be better placed to succeed professionally, while also taking emotional care of ourselves, so that we can have healthy professional lives too. I would prefer a reality where employers and employees can be open, honest in their dialogue about employment. I wish that more companies understood the levers to pull to create healthier and more equitable cultures. I'd be happy to see a world where competence and integrity were non-negotiable qualifiers for senior management roles. I think employees would prefer honesty and transparency with their employers, over being lied to and disappointed. But this is unlikely to happen anytime soon. So here we are. Don't get me wrong. Work is still work, and doing anything because you have to do it will always feel like different than doing things you want to. But when you play the game with a wider view, not taking things so personally, and doing the inner work to know your value, how work feels will change. Shifting your mindset and making professional decisions based on reality will always benefit you in the long run. Even if initially it doesn't feel great to face depressing facts. Like, my recommendation is to figure out what you're good at, equally important, what you are not good at, and own it without hesitation. Seek out roles that fit your strengths. Trying to square peg, round hole yourself into a bad fit has a compounding negative impact on your self-worth. I'm talking specifically to executives. Don't hide your weaknesses. Own them and hire people who are both better than you and good at stuff you don't know how to do well. Like, side note, have people in your professional network to consult with on your weak areas. Hey, maybe you're lucky and you love your job. You love your job so much you couldn't imagine doing anything else. But more likely, there are other things you dream of doing, things that inspire you and make you happy, but aren't things that earn a living. Then your job is to figure out how to build a plan to use your capital to create a life where you can spend more time doing what you love. This plan could include how to optimize your earning potential so you can have more time to enjoy life later on. This plan will continue to evolve over time, and there will be unexpected turns along the way, which may drastic changes. What's important is that you have this plan and remember that your current job is a means to a bigger, more personal end. I used to have a note on my computer, and every time I saw someone doing something amazing that quite frankly broke my heart because of the time I felt like I was buried under the weight of the world with my job, I would write it down. So, surf in Africa, cycle in Croatia, yoga in India, massage school in Thailand, live in Bali. And you know what? I did all those things. But when I was living in Bali, one day, after my morning yoga class, I was having breakfast in a gorgeous restaurant and watching the servers. And I could sense that I missed some of the very specific aspects of contribution and satisfaction that work brings. So I happily went back to working and incorporating what I'd learned about myself to find a better fit in a company I joined. As previously mentioned, I like working and I like doing other stuff. So, have a place that incorporates perspective that will help you emotionally frame up your role as just one piece of the bigger puzzle of your life. This knowledge will help you cope when you feel unhappy about your situation. It will remind you that you are in control of your destiny and that better days are to come.
And we'll be right back. In 1999, I took a vacation day to watch The Matrix in the best theater I could find in New Jersey. Watching that movie felt like a religious experience to me then. I wanted out of the Matrix. Where was my red pill? The next day I returned to my office, sat at my desk, and worked on a looming deadline. Gone was the energy from the day before, and things returned to how they had been before I saw the movie. What happened? Imagine if your company were to send out a broadcast email to everyone at 9 a.m. In it, they remind everyone that the U.S. is a hire, fire at will country, and that irrespective of your hard work, they reserve the right to downsize employees at any time they feel appropriate. They'd close the email with a reminder that bonuses and compensation increases were unlikely this year, and that promotion is more likely to be directly tied to political connections than to experience or expertise. Want to guess how the sentiment in your office changes after everyone reads this email? What will be the implications for productivity and innovation? What level of commitment would you expect employees to invest in making the company better or rooting out and addressing risks? Think about the impact to the quality of products, services, how customers might experience employees they interact with after this email. This example lays bare the obvious reasons why employers don't want uncomfortable truths to be transparent. Doing so would curb the kinds of behaviors they depend on for success. The more intriguing question is whether employees want to confront these truths. And I was thinking about it, and I'm kind of surmising that folks probably fall into three buckets here. And the first are those who, they see everything with clear eyes. Either they've had the experience of being laid off or discriminated against or reorged, or maybe some of the folks in this group are from Gen Z, most of whom don't buy into this fantasy of work like some people from previous generations. But there's another group of people who have a big mortgage and college to pay for. Maybe they have special needs children or aging parents that need health care. Or they're still paying down debt accrued after a work hiatus. Maybe some folks in this bucket have just accepted a new role in a company which seems really cool. I mean, come on, the last thing in the world you want to be reminded of is the precariousness of it all. If it's just too much, you just might want to enjoy it for a while, to drink a little of that Kool-Aid. And I'm guessing if you're in this camp, some of the things that we talk about on this show might just seem a little too much. And that's totally okay, because you're doing what you have to do, and I have a ton of respect for it. And then the final group to mention are the ones who kind of fall between the first two groups. Yeah, they know there's a game, and they maybe carry some scars to prove it. They have serious earthly responsibilities, but they're starting to also understand that their spirit and health are precious, and that our time on this earth is more limited than we can comprehend. If you're in this group, the topics we discuss on this show can be highly conflicting. The tension doesn't feel good, but something kind of compels you to listen anyway. You're coming into your own and trusting your strengths, believing in yourself and your ability to get through anything. You aren't ready to retire, nor are you willing to settle. You're learning the game and putting all your chips on you. So back to the Matrix, there's a great line in the movie where Cypher, played by the great Joe Pantoliano, says, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss. And as great of a scene as this is, I think I disagree. And I'd counter that with a quote from Carl Jung, which goes, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious."
Hey, fellow psychos, if you enjoyed the show, please click like, subscribe, and share it with other psychos you know. We'd also love to hear from you, so please hit us up on our socials. We're at Business Psychos Pod on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.